Tannenbaum, ESPN NFL front office insider, former NFL GM. You can see him on ESPN programs like Get Up, SportsCenter, NFL Live. Good to have Mike T back with us. The Davante Adams situation, I guess the quote was he preferred a trade. How does a player tell management that he wants to be traded?
Dan, great to be with you as always. They walk in, knock on your door, either them or their agent. And something that's really important, though, in 2024 is we saw it recently a couple of years ago with Jalen Ramsey. He says, hey, I'm no longer a Jaguar, and he doesn't play until he's traded. So Davante Adams hamstring could last a very long time. So, in the past, maybe 5-10 years ago, you could try to work things out. But I think the way it is now with some of these A players, when they decide on something, they do have leverage under the rules to say they quote unquote can't play, and they're holding in, not holding out.
Well, you bring up a great point with Davante. He's got the hamstring injury. Well, he's already said he wants to play elsewhere. So if you're the Raiders, if he even is cleared to play, are you going to play him?
Yeah, well, look, I probably wouldn't, because if I'm Antonio Pierce, I'm in year one, Dan, of a massive rebuild. I got to get the quarterback. I'd rather have a second or third round pick, knowing that if I needed to trade up in the draft to go get quarterback X, that's probably better for us long term than having a guy that's, let's face it, a great player, but clearly much closer to the end and probably won't help us in 2 to 3 years anyway.
Okay. Davante says the Jets or the Saints. Well, the Raiders don't care who he wants to go to. How does that work if all of a sudden you get a better deal from New England?
Yep.
And he doesn't want to go there?
I've been in that situation before. Like, hey, look, we're going to try to accommodate you, but we will do what is best for the Las Vegas Raiders. So if it's Team X, look, we got to get the best compensation we can. If it's the Jets, if it's the Saints, as it's been reported because of the Derek Carr relationship, absolutely. But we're not going to give you away to those teams, because we also have an organization to run, and that's who my responsibility is to. So we will be open, we will be transparent, but we are not indiscriminately letting you walk to New York, to Aaron Rodgers for a 6th-round pick, given, what we gave up for you just 2 short years ago.
Is Tyreek Hill trying to flirt with the Kansas City Chiefs?
Yeah, I think Tyreek Hill is savvier than people realize. I think he's saying all the right things, and you want to take care of your home base, which I think he's done very well. He's been a great player for Miami. Obviously, there was a bump in the road with what happened a couple of weeks ago, but I think he handled that situation really well. And it looks like he's really maturing as a player and as a person. I would say he is being really pragmatic from a standpoint that, look, if I have a chance to go win a title with Patrick Mahomes and I just got paid again, sure, I'll take my cake and eat it too. I just would be hard-pressed, Dan, to see Miami move on. He's been a great player for them. They just paid him. I just don't see them wanting to do that.
Okay, that brings us to the Tua situation. If you're the Dolphins GM, now once again, we've said that this is a business. We're looking at this from a business perspective, trying not to be insensitive. But if you're the Dolphins GM, is there any part of you that says we have to look at moving on from our quarterbacking position? Can we move on from our quarterbacking position?
I think, both things can be true, that we believe in Tua, and we also have to act in a responsible way, just given what's happened, obviously, in the last couple of weeks and earlier in his career. And I think the best way to do that, Dan, candidly, is probably next year's draft. I just think the cost, when you're paying a guy over $50 million a year, I think it's really hard to bring in, fill in the blank, Gardner Minshew, Joe Flacco, and add another $10 million of resources where you have obviously a lot of other needs you want to address. So to me, maybe it's a 2nd-round pick. I mentioned it last year. It's a little bit apples to oranges, but similar, like with Dak Prescott. Like at that time, Dak's heading into the last year of his deal. If I'm Jerry Jones, I'm drafting Spencer Rattler in the 2nd or 3rd round just to give me a little insurance. And those 2nd or 3rd round quarterbacks, Dan, are such value relative to the cap that, to me, if I'm Miami or another team that just, Trevor Lawrence is another one, hey, I'm going to start hedging, but I got to hedge through the draft.
Yeah, I'm just trying to figure out, do you think the NFL wants Tua to be medically cleared?
That's a simple question and a complicated answer. First of all, just for the audience, the last step for any player, including Tua, to be cleared to play, he has to be cleared by an independent neurologist. I've been in situations where a player went through the other 4 steps. We got to a Saturday expecting the player would play, had no setbacks, and an independent neurologist wouldn't clear a player, which includes things like having contact at practice, having your baseline test compared to where it was in the spring. So I think the league ultimately, Dan, they're going to stand on, we've changed our protocol and process, and if and when Tua is cleared, it's by a jointly appointed physician. So be it the Dolphins or any other team, they're not dealing with the issue of, hey, we're clearing a player for our interests, not the players.
I just can't imagine holding your breath, Mike, for another 70 games with Tua. When you sign him to this deal, I mean, and what are the odds that he'll never have another concussion?
Yeah, I mean, obviously those are very low, and that's why to me, like their next step is look, when he's played well, but durability's been an issue. He played full season last year. Let's give him credit, but beyond that, be it at Alabama or in the pros, he's had issues. That's why I think Miami's next step would probably be in the draft. Because you're right, if you and I were running a team, it wouldn't be reasonable to think that he's going to play, 17 games without another bump in the road.
Can you see a situation where, and once again, I have no information on this. I did ask about this yesterday with an NFL scout, that maybe Shedeur Sanders would say, I'm not going to Carolina. Like, do you think we'll see an Eli Manning situation with any of these quarterbacks in the coming years?
Absolutely, and here's why: they have a lot more money. Some of these guys are coming in with 8 figures worth of NIL deal or what soon will be revenue sharing. So if you have $10 million in your bank account, you're going to comport yourself differently than if you're coming in as someone that's just trying to make it economically. So it's not going to be a lot of players, but it's a Shedeur Sanders. Certainly, an Arch Manning will certainly come to mind, not just because of his lineage, but presumably by all the money he's probably making at Texas. So when these higher profile quarterbacks are working their way through the system, without question, look, Caleb Williams didn't do that. He probably had the stature if he wanted to, for whatever reason. Hey, I don't want to be a Bear. He may have been able to do it economically.
And I wonder about this, being a former GM, they're getting paid now. They're professionals in college, and they have money. So does that help you when you're drafting these quarterbacks of maturity level, or they understand finances a little bit more? They're not going to go out and blow their money on a Maserati as soon as they get there. Does that help in drafting somebody when you feel like they got a little bit of a head start in that category?
Yes, but here's the counter to that, Dan. I've talked to a lot of people in the league about this. Here's what we don't know, and Caleb Williams and Jaden Daniels are just the most recent examples. When quarterbacks transfer, that used to be a big red flag. Obviously, the world's different now. But when you've only had adulation and been able to move situations when you weren't happy, that doesn't happen in the NFL. So if and when Caleb Williams has a 4-game losing streak, he's not going to be able to go from the Bears to the Packers. And to be able to have the mental toughness and the resiliency, when you talk to Parcells about Phil Simms in his formative years and what it was like to develop a quarterback in New York, or Eli Manning early on, like, they had a mental toughness that is rare. And that's something we don't know about these young quarterbacks. And we're going to learn, I think, both good and bad in the coming years on especially the guys that have transferred and how they handle criticism and how they handle hard coaching when things aren't going well.
Good stuff, Mike. Great to talk to you again. Thank you.
All right, Dan. Appreciate it.
Mike Tannenbaum, ESPN NFL front office insider. You can see him on Get Up, SportsCenter, NFL Live.